Hey guys, so I was kind of on the fence for the last few days about whether or not I wanted to make a video about this because it feels like just kind of gossipy, just tea, and those videos can be fun, but it's not really something that I want to do. However, I decided to make it because as we're going to discuss throughout this story, as with any industry, the publishing industry has a whisper network. Authors talk. We, share things privately that we would not necessarily share publicly about who to work with, who not to work with. We try to keep each other safe professionally, And a lot of you guys who watch my videos are aspiring authors and you want to pursue traditional publishing, which means you're going to be looking for a literary agent. And if you're new to this, you're not part of the Whisper network yet, because that just takes making connections. And I'll just start up front by saying this. I mean, consider me your connection. If you ever want to email me privately with a question about something that you don't want to ask publicly, like, should I query this agency? Please feel free to do so anytime. My email address is, I don't know if it's in the description, but I think it's in the About Me part of my YouTube video. You can also do it through my website. I am sometimes kind of crap at responding right away, but I promise I will do my best to respond. So all that being said, let's talk about the fact that Friday night, this past Friday night, I think like pretty late at night, like I want to say 10 p.m. EST maybe around is when this happened. A bunch of authors who were represented by New Leaf, some of them published, some of them not quite yet published, some of them having gone on submission that very day, were dropped via a mass email. And what I want to do is walk through everything that happened that's out there. And then at the end of this video, I'm just going to give kind of my own thoughts about it. So we're going to start with, even though this wasn't the beginning of it, Publishers Weekly did end up publishing a piece about this, which I'm grateful for. And so I'm actually going to start with that because it lays everything out pretty clearly. New Leaf Literary and Media faces backlash after dropping authors. After the agency split with an agent on May 12th, several of the agent's clients were told that they would no longer be represented and took to Twitter to express their frustration. A group of authors and illustrators represented by agent Jordan Hamelsey were left reeling on May 12th after the agency informed them that Hamelsey had, quote, amicably parted ways with the company and that they would no longer receive representation as a result. In a statement posted to her Twitter account on May 16th, Hamelsey countered that she, quote, would not characterize my departure from New Leaf as amicable. The controversy unfolded shortly after New Leaf announced a series of changes to its staff structure. And I want to interrupt here. I will leave a link to that article about their rebranding below. It came out a week ago. And I will just say that it shows that there was intent and a plan to do this. And the fact that both the agent, Jordan Hamelsey, and her clients were let go so abruptly and with no warning, it's just all while this was being painted as a rebranding is pretty gross to me, my opinion. According to the agency, Hamelsey managed a roster of 45 clients. Of that roster, 19 clients were offered continued representation under other New Leaf literary agents, with one refusing to move forward under another agent. The agency said it released 11 clients who were considered inactive, with no projects under contract or in process, according to agency records. Another 15 clients were informed that they would continue to have agency representation through current contract negotiations and submissions, but that the agency was discussing options on the, quote, right fit to move forward with representation on their future work. With some multi-selling authors released and others kept on, affected clients took to Twitter to express feelings of rejection from the agency and frustration over the handling of the transition. With industry writers, editors, agents, and former New Leaf authors weighing in on the situation, New Leaf began trending on the social media platform as a dialogue about the merits of the author-agent relationship was discussed. Quote, I definitely was surprised at the sheer number of clients who were dropped, said a New Leaf author on Hamelsey's roster who wished to comment anonymously. There were some authors who really seemed to be finding success, and I never would have imagined wouldn't be taken on by another agent. According to the author, quote, "I was told in the email that I received as notice of Jordan's departure that no one would currently be able to take me on. However, they would still handle any ongoing contracts," they explained. "Ultimately, since no one was currently able or willing to take on my work, I chose to look for representation elsewhere, as I have a lot going on in my publishing career and wasn't comfortable with the time it could have taken to," quote, "discuss options." An email from Hamilsey sent Friday afternoon at 3:28 p.m., which New Leaf said was pre-scheduled, announced her summer hours, and reiterated her support and passion for her clients. Several hours later, Hamilsey's clients were informed that she had left the agency, leading many to believe her exit was abrupt and unplanned from the conflicting communications. And here's a tweet from Taylor Tracy. "One of my former agent Sibs wanted me to point this out. On Friday at 3:28 p.m. ET, I received the bottom email about my agent planning ahead for summer. The top email came in at 10:16 p.m. Less than 7 hours doesn't feel amicable." And you can see the two emails here. The one on the bottom from Jordan saying, "I hope you're all doing well. It's been a busy few months." And it's just basically the start of her email talking about her summer schedule. And then above that is an update from New Leaf. And it says, "I'm New Leaf's literary director, and I'm writing today because New Leaf and Jordan Hamilsey have amicably parted ways." So yeah, we already had this confirmed later by Jordan herself, but it was not an amicable parting of the ways. And even if that email of hers with her summer hours was pre-scheduled, like, if she had been given time, obviously she would have, adjusted that and not sent the email out. So I don't even know why New Leaf making a statement on the pre-scheduledness of the email, why they think that's relevant, because I don't think it is. Anyway. About Hamilsey's departure, quote, "I don't have enough information to publicly speculate the agency's reasoning, but I have so many questions, and why is a great starting point," said an affected author who also wished to remain anonymous. They added, "Why did New Leaf suddenly part ways with an agent and let us know at 10:16 on the Friday of Mother's Day weekend, when many of us had plans with family or were traveling, and we heard from their literary director and not from Jordan herself when she wrote us earlier that day indicating plans through at least summer at New Leaf." New Leaf literary director Patrice Caldwell told PW that the agency aimed to inform Hamilsey's clients of her departure immediately and all at once, before word could spread individually among clients. Quote, "There was no way to do this as quickly by calling people, nor did we want people to start sharing publicly about this before we told everyone," Caldwell explained. "We wanted to send an email to give as much transparency as I can. Due to information not being updated on Hamilsey's end, some clients thought to be inactive were indeed active with contracts and submissions in process," Caldwell explained. "The agency apologized to them immediately and assured them we would take care of things and offered them options on how to move forward," she said. "We are still handling all contracts for all clients." Caldwell said that the team worked in shifts to ensure that any inquiries about next steps were answered in a timely manner over the weekend, and that all affected authors had the agency's support to move forward. Quote, "We completely understand why Jordan's clients who weren't offered a continued space from here are upset, and we respect their decision to process this change how it feels best to them," said Caldwell. She explained that the agency not moving forward with representing all of Hamilsey's clients came down to ensure those authors could be paired with agents who are excited and understood their work without infringing on an agent's capacity. Speaking on background, a longtime literary agent confirmed that what New Leaf did was, quote, "unusual and not standard practice," while another said that clients released by the agency would be better served finding new representation than being represented by agents who aren't passionate about their work. About an expectation that the agency should continue representing all of Hamilsey's clients after her departure, Caldwell said, quote, "This is unfortunately the industry expectation, and I believe that leads to a bad experience for the client and the agent and associate." New Leaf founder and president Joanna Volpe added that the decision to offer representation to some and release others was made as a team effort based on interest in a client's work from their New Leaf's team. Quote, "That was a really difficult decision to have to make," said Volpe. Quote, "It's not always about the clients themselves. When you're making these decisions, you try to do it all at once so that no one is finding out through a grapevine, which feels really bad. There was just no way to make room for everybody on everybody else's list, and I do feel really strongly it's not fair to anybody to say you are taking these 5 or 6 clients, whether you are interested in them or not." Hamilsey's statement on Twitter ran counter to those provided earlier by New Leaf. Quote, "I was not asked questions about the current status of my clients' submissions upon my exit," Hamilsey wrote. Refuting New Leaf's assertions that the information about her clients was not updated, she added, quote, "My contract and deal negotiation files were up to date." Hamilsey added that she had, quote, "no intention of ending her relationship with any client on her list." Quote, I would hope to resume things once I have found a new home, she said. I do not begrudge anyone who seeks new representation elsewhere while I conduct my search. In an official statement on the matter, the Authors Guild expressed concern that Hamelsey's clients continue to be supported through the transition. Quote, the Authors Guild strongly believes that every agent needs to have a succession plan for their authors in case of disabling, ill health, or death, and we instruct authors to inquire about such a contingency plan. We have seen far too many authors left in the lurch over the years. The statement continued, quote, New Leaf authors who were impacted by this sudden shakeup can reach out to us, though we can only represent Authors Guild members in legal manners. Authors who are members of the Authors Guild should send in their agency agreements to our legal staff so we can advise them on their rights. New Leaf told PW that it had been actively reaching out to Authors Guild representatives to clarify the situation. In a statement to PW, author Stephanie Lucianovic said, undoubtedly, you'll find out a lot about our reactions to these unceremoniously abrupt, late Friday night agency oustings on our socials, but our primary concern for the last 48 hours has been gathering our shocked and distraught agent-mate community and taking care of one another as best as we can. Okay, so before I get into my thoughts about that, I want to go through and give you the full quotes that were just mentioned in that article because I believe they deserve some space. And actually, I want to start with Jordan's. And I'm starting with Jordan and not New Leaf because New Leaf did not make any kind of public statement about this. And I'm not even saying that they should have, but what they did was quietly and privately fire an agent and then send a mass email to cut most of her authors. And the authors, and I have to emphasize this, and we're already getting into my opinion, but aspiring authors and mid-list authors who are seeking representation and might have even been on submission at that time are taking it upon themselves to bring all of this to light. And it will never cease to frustrate me that it's always us. I include myself in this because I am a mid-list author, and hey, I am currently querying, that take this risk that agents and editors are going to look at us talking about this publicly and be like, oh, there's a troublemaker, I don't want to work with her. But you know what? It's worth it if it spreads the word, because this is just such BS. Okay, getting into my opinionated stuff. I'm going to start with author Jordan the agent's full statement. Thank you to everyone who has reached out these past few days following my sudden and unexpected departure from New Leaf Literary and Media. It was not my choice to leave, and I am heartbroken to learn that the publishing journeys of so many of my clients have been disrupted. I had no intention of ending my relationship with anyone on my list, and I would hope to resume things once I have found a new home. I do not begrudge anyone who seeks new representation elsewhere while I conduct my search. I will always support you as a friend and fan. I would not characterize my departure from New Leaf as amicable. I was not asked any questions about the current status of my clients' submissions upon my exit. My contract and deal negotiation files were up to date. My whole career, I have sought to support authors and illustrators from underrepresented and historically disenfranchised groups, knowing there are systematic, industry-wide challenges finding homes for these storytellers. Last year, I was proud to secure deals for many long-term clients for the first time, including multiple projects that evolved over the course of years. That's the trust and long-term care I am committed to for my clients. I don't give up. So just in case it wasn't clear to anyone who saw the authors speaking out on Twitter and thought, oh, maybe they're exaggerating or they're just hurt or da-da-da, we have it here from the fired agent herself that the statement that New Leaf gave, and I'm specifically talking about Joanna Volpe, who is the founder and president, and Patrice Caldwell, who sent the mass email, it was a lie. It was a lie. So we have that. Now, before we get into the authors, there were a couple of tweets that pointed out that this is not the first time agents have been treated this way at New Leaf. This tweet from Gibson Twist says, "We're pretty lucky that our agent parted ways with New Leaf not long ago, though we were never represented under the New Leaf umbrella. From what I can tell, they did kind of shaft her out of some money they owed her. Curious how many other agents they burned." And this thread from Penny Moore. "Can we also talk about how that agency has the tendency to entice poor agents needing stability by offering a steady salary and benefits, but when those agents aren't making major deals left and right, they eventually fire them, leaving their poor clients in a terrible situation? They either fire agents for not selling enough, or they make it so unbearable for the ones who do that they often leave. Look at the turnover rate of their agents, and look how it affects their clients negatively each and every time. It's a pattern. Pay attention." I'll also say, when an agent leaves the industry, they might not have the power to help you find a new home, but at the very least, they or their agency should give you a heads up and talk you through potential next steps so you aren't blindsided in the worst possible way. And lastly, before we get into my opinion, I just wanted to share some of the longer stories that former New Leaf clients shared on Twitter. So here's a thread from author Sarah Patel. I never thought I'd be able to share my experience being a signed and then dropped author with New Leaf. As writers, we're told to let it go, that speaking out could mean we'll never land a new agent. I finally feel like it's okay to speak publicly. It began in 2017, when I got the offer call. That was when the red flags started. I was given 1 week to accept. During the week of BEA, Joe refused to let me speak with any of her existing clients, quote, due to their privacy. Nearly every agent that had a query, partial, or full dropped out due to the time constraint. A few remained and asked who the offering agent was. When I said it was Joe at New Leaf, they stepped aside. I was left with one offer, hers. At the time, I didn't mind since she represented the biggest names in publishing with major deals. I felt incredibly lucky that she chose to work with me. We did a small round of edits and went out on sub to a few editors with a proposal instead of a full manuscript. We got responses within a few weeks, then decided to do a larger edit. I turned them in and I received an email saying that she loved the changes. During a phone call soon after, I was then told that something wasn't working and she didn't know how to edit my book. Joe suggested that I find another agent who could. I was devastated. After some back and forth, she suggested that I hire an editor and said that many of her big clients did that and they went on to make major book deals. She offered to send me a list of editors to consider working with. At this point, I felt like I had no other choice. I looked over the list and did my research. They were ungodly expensive. I was newly married, but my husband was supportive and we didn't have kids yet, so we invested the $5,000 into an editor. While I had the choice to not do this, that also meant not having an agent. I trusted my agent and the process. After all, she knew what she was doing. How could I not take a chance? After all it took to get this far. Looking back, I believe that this was likely her way of getting me to leave, but that is not where the story ends. With the editor, I split the book into two and added a ton of content to go on sub with a full. It was a ton of work, but worth it. I turned it in and did more revisions with their newly hired in-house editor. At this point, it was 2020. I just had my son and COVID hit, but we were finally going back on sub. All the work was going to be worth it. Then a call was scheduled for the day before. I knew from the tone in Joe's voice that this was bad. I was told she no longer had the time to send out my book, but was willing to send me the sub list to give to another agent. I was shocked and gutted. How was this even possible? I did everything she asked and we were so close. I struggled to hold it together. I cried after the call. I asked how long it would be until she did have time. I got the runaround. After some back and forth, I was offered an alternative solution. Go on sub with her assistant acting as my agent. Again, I felt like I had no other choice but to accept. At this point, I was traumatized and defeated. All of my hard work and money was for nothing. My agent wanted nothing to do with me. I couldn't write. I was filled with self-doubt. I was terrified to email for any reason, afraid that I'd be a burden to either of them and be let go. I kept our correspondence to a minimum. While on sub, about half the editors replied. I'm sure part of this was the stress of COVID and being overworked, but I can't help but wonder what the responses would have been like if I'd gone out with someone passionate about my work, especially knowing that some of the editors on the list were not looking for books in the genre that I write, fantasy. My correspondence remained with Joe's assistant. Eventually, without any concrete guidance on what to write next, I jumped from work in progress to work in progress and rewrote everything repeatedly. Eventually, I gathered my courage and sent in a few chapters on a new project. Surprisingly, Joe replied and wanted a call. I knew that, without a doubt, I was going to be dropped, and that was exactly what happened in the fall of 2021. So I was left with a manuscript I poured myself into that now had extremely limited options if I signed with someone new. I was lucky to have landed partial critiques with editors last year. Not only did they give amazing feedback, they loved the book and my writing. I cried happy tears after each call. There's no way to thank them enough for their kind words that made me realize that I wasn't a failure or a bad writer. I'm getting back to the writing that I love, and I'm excited to find an agent who will be a supportive partner. And then we have this tweet from author AJ Irving, who says, I was with my agent for 5 years, and then New Leaf had the audacity to add this to my termination email. Quote, should this change in the future as our team grows and you'd like to query us with any of your work, you can reach out to us with the subject line, former agent submission. I think audacity is really the only appropriate word there. Yeah. Here's another thread from Cassandra Newbold. I can only speak to my experiences with New Leaf and having been a client of Susie and Jordan. I feel like years of opportunity as an author were stolen from me. The holding patterns you're put in are obnoxious. I know that now. Like, for instance, my debut, Things I'll Never Say. Actually, let me back up. I wrote a manuscript and turned in the full in March of 2019. I didn't even hear back from her about notes for it until August 29th, saying she'd get notes back to me, quote, shortly. I didn't get those notes until July 24th, 2020. Mind you, during that time I was releasing an anthology. However, there were months of downtime, being acquisitions and release, and let me just say, I emailed Jordan often about when I'd get notes for my new manuscript so we could go on sub. Mind you, I have over 30 emails where she ghosted. Like, straight up never replied. Some were super important with deadline needed info. So anyway, after she finally got my notes for that manuscript, I spent less than a month editing because it was that polished. We went on sub, and while that was happening, I wrote another manuscript. This one I turned in June of 21. In October of 21, she said there was no way she'd be able to get me notes before her maternity leave and to expect them in the spring. So here I'd be put on hold again for a full manuscript for over a half a year just to get notes. I'd had enough. I was beyond defeated. I wanted to give up on writing altogether. I was always thinking that I must not be that important, that my time didn't deserve an answer. I was constantly anxious whenever I emailed because there was a good chance there'd be no response. And the most effed up part is I kept telling myself, but you're with New Leaf. That name means something in this industry. It's why I went back to them after Susie showed me I meant nothing when she dropped me. It's why I thanked them for a second chance. I believed the BS. I know I'm not the only one because an entire client list had to be dropped at 10 p.m. on a Friday night by email to get anyone to start talking on Main about their shady treatment of their clients, but I digress. So this manuscript I mentioned that I wouldn't be getting notes for, well, I finally said, F this, I'm out. Took the holidays to regain some kind of mental health break and zen. And that's when my author life finally changed for the better. I queried Ernie Chiara on January 11th, 2022. He offered rep and I accepted on February 3rd. But wait, check this. He got me my notes on Things I'll Never Say within a week. And we went on sub on February 22nd, 2022. It sold in March. You guys clocking this timeline? The manuscript that Jordan wouldn't have even returned notes for got yet another agent, edits, and sold. If I'd stayed, I wouldn't be celebrating my upcoming debut release 3 weeks from now. I look forward to the conversations with my agent now. Ernie motivates me in so many different ways because he actually gives an F. Not just about me, but about all his clients, which is what we deserve. I'm bitter because I let this sit in my head for so long. I'm salty because this happened to so many other authors and not a single one deserves it. I never felt like I had a voice to talk about it when it happened to me. I refused to keep quiet seeing it happening to someone else. And yes, I did email Jo to let her know everything about my time with Jordan when I left the agency. Did she care? Bet you can answer that one without me. Writers deserve to feel like equals with their agent. It's a partnership. You are mutually beneficial to each other, period. You deserve your emails answered, notes on your manuscripts in a timely manner, and respect. I'm sorry that y'all didn't get the respect that you deserve. And then this final tweet from Bethany Jonathan Baptiste. This specific agency has fired many authors for months now, using the generosity and kindness of those authors, choosing not to drag them publicly to advertise this, quote, rebrand from, quote, literary agents to, quote, literary managers like it's a wave of the future. No, it's not. And again, I will link that rebranding article down below so you can read it and make your own judgments. But now we are going to get into my opinion. The short version is my opinion is this is absolute garbage, and it's indefensible. It's absolutely indefensible to treat authors this way. Now, I do have a few disclaimers to make here. One, I was never a New Leaf client. However, I do have a very small experience with New Leaf in that you guys know I co-authored my series Secrets of Topsy, and my co-author was with New Leaf at the time. And we signed, our agents worked together. We had a agency like co-agreement together. We went on submission together. And both of our agents sold the project. However, New Leaf did retain the sub rights completely. And they still do. Because what I learned is that New Leaf, and I believe this is like template contract standard deal for everybody for them, they can hold on to your rights for 2 years after you part ways for any reason. That's my understanding of it. It's not industry standard. It shouldn't be that way. You should be able to get your rights back if you part ways with an agency. It bothers me that they still hold the subrights to 2 books that I co-authored, but and you can see how in a situation like this, you know, that kind of screws the author over. Like, what right do they have, pun intended, to hold on to those rights? They don't. Anyway, my other disclaimer is that the agent who was fired, Jordan Hamelsey, she was my first editor ever. She was the editor who acquired the I Heart Band series at Penguin. She also acquired the Cat Sinclair files. And then she moved from Penguin to Egmont, US, the US branch of Egmont, and acquired a 2-book deal from me that was supposed to be Olive and the Backstage Ghost and Spell and Spindle. And then, and I've talked about this in other videos, so I will not rehash it here, but Egmont UK announced that they were going to try to sell the US branch of Egmont. And then after like 6 months of speculation on who was going to buy it, abruptly, they just announced they were closing it altogether. And so it was upsetting for me because I lost a 2-book contract, and I had I knew a lot of the authors at Egmont who had their book deals canceled, including several debuts, which makes it just extra heartbreaking. But the worst part of it was that Jordan and all of those editors were very abruptly fired and lost their author lists. And now it's like she's going through that again. And everything that the author Cassandra, who I do not know, everything she said in her Twitter thread about her experience with Jordan, I'm not discounting that. If there were communication problems, there were communication problems. So I'm not trying to defend that or anything. All I'm saying is, regardless, I can't, it's hard for me to say like what it must be like to be an agent at New Leaf if you are not Joe, Susie, or Patrice, apparently. They have had a lot of agent turnover, and that is out there for you to look into. So I would imagine that it is very challenging to be an agent there in ways they feel like they can't talk about, for the same reason that authors felt like they could not talk about it, because it's New Leaf. They represent some of the biggest names, especially in young adult literature. If you're querying young adult or middle grade, they're probably at the top of your list because you're looking at those authors, and yeah, they make big deals. They're huge. But that doesn't mean that their practices are solid, and that definitely doesn't mean you're going to be well taken care of, again, as an author or an agent. So that's not to defend a lack of communication and an incredibly long time to get edit notes back to your authors. I'm not defending that. I support Cassandra and everything she said. I just wanted to put that out there. I don't think anybody deserves to be let go just like that and lose their author list. Second of all, and now I'm forgetting which author's thread ended with this. I think it was also Cassandra, but here is the biggest thing that's killing me about this is that the author-agent relationship is not employer-employee. Or maybe I said that the wrong way. The agent-author relationship is not employer-employee. It is a partnership. An agent doesn't make money unless they sell your book. An agent works for the 15% commission on your books. It's a partnership. And because it is so difficult to break into traditional publishing, aspiring authors often feel like they should be grateful for anything they get from an agent, but that's truly not the case. You want to find an agent who is genuinely a good match for you, because there's a lot of cases where an agent might be really good and an author might be really good, but they just find out that they don't work well together. Maybe their communication styles don't line up. Maybe the editorial editing styles don't line up. That's nobody's fault. It's just not the best. It wasn't the best match. That's all it is. And you deserve respect from your agent. An agent should not be taking on clients if they are already so overloaded that it's going to take them 6 months or longer just to read your new project to get it on submission. That's the bottom line. And it is very clear to me, again, my opinion, that the way the people at the top of New Leaf, Joe and Susie, have been treating this from the beginning is just, I don't think they see authors as people. Guys, I'm sorry, I just don't. I don't know how many times I can say this, but my opinion, I'm not trying to say this as fact, but that's the perception I have had for years. Because as I started out this video saying, publishing has a whisper network, and Every single thing I read to you guys, and there's so much more out there. There's stuff on Reddit. There's lots more on Twitter. You can go find it. All of these stories, the only shocking thing to me was that people were finally saying it out loud. Because I have heard all of them directly from many, many authors that I have known who were at New Leaf at some point in the past for the better part of the last decade. So I'm happy it's out there. I'm so sad to hear about, you know, if you're querying or if you have ever been through the querying thing, that it's scary to query because some agents you just don't know. Is it a schmagent? Are they gonna like do something like try to get me to pay $5,000 for an editor? No. That's their job. That's their job as an agent to edit you. Look, if you want to invest and you want to hire an editor, go for it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with hiring an editor, but agents should not be encouraging their brand new authors that they just signed to pay $5,000 to get their book edited. That's a schmagent practice. That's not real. That's not how it works. No. So I don't think they see their authors as people. I think they see them as means to an end. I think one of the biggest problems in the publishing industry, and again, we've talked about this, the issue that was just dragged out into the light during the DOJ, Penguin Random House, Simon & Schuster trial, is that while publishers acknowledge that a healthy mid-list is the best way to like sustain their business financially, for whatever reason, the strategy that they keep going is to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Just to go for those big giant books, those big authors that are going to keep your lights on. And it rarely works that way. That kind of breakout success is so rare, but that seems to be what New Leaf's strategy is. And if it doesn't matter if your book sold. It doesn't even matter if your book sold in like a good deal, like a 6-figure deal. It doesn't matter if your book hit the list for a couple weeks. It doesn't matter if you won some awards. If you aren't keeping the lights on, who are you? Like, you're at a risk of getting dropped by them at any moment because they don't see you as a person. They don't understand that an agent is literally, I mean, very literally has your entire career in their hands, especially when it's your debut and you're just starting out. They have no, if they do understand it, they have absolutely no respect for it because they're just taking authors in, giving it whatever, and then discarding them. And I'm very angry. So, like I said, if you are new to this industry, if you don't feel like you're in any online spaces or you don't have any friends who are in the industry and can bring you into this whisper network and talk about other agencies who might be doing similar things that have great reputations, just please consider me your source. You can email me, check my website, check the About Me section of my YouTube. I will do my best to get back to everybody. Just if you want to check in and say, hey, I'm going to query so-and-so, I might not know. I'm not saying I know everything, but if I know that you should not, that you should run away, I will 100% tell you, and I will tell you why. I also just want to quickly comment, and this is a little to the side, and maybe I'm being a little defensive here, but I wanted to comment on a response I saw brought up frequently by people who are just like reading this on Twitter, on Reddit, and all the various places. And the response, which again came from many different people, was, to paraphrase, "This is why traditional publishing is a trash fire and I'm going self-publishing." And yes, I'm being a little self-defensive here. Just to address that really quickly, I've discussed traditional and self-publishing many, many times in the past. I think they are not two things that we should put in a one is better than the other comparison game, but just they're different paths, and it's up to the author, and in particular the type of project. You know, it might do better here, it might do better here. My personal opinion is, you know, I am traditionally published and I am not opposed to self-publishing in the future. I have some ideas for things that I think would work well in that arena specifically. However, for the things I am working on currently in this moment, for my goals and the resources I have, traditional publishing continues to be the best path for me. That is how I feel about it. But I don't think that looking at a situation like what is happening right now with New Leaf is a reason for you If you are trying to decide between the two and you feel like you want to be traditionally published, to say, oh, I'm going to give up on this because I would be an idiot. Because that's like the message I'm getting. I would have to be an idiot to continue trying to go this route where it's like nothing but people who want to take advantage of me when I could just self-publish. They're different paths. They're not going to be the same for different... It's not that simple. I don't think it's ever as simple as, oh, well, I, had a bad experience with traditional, so I'm just going to self-publish. There's just so much else that goes into self-publishing that I feel like it's an insult to both things to just say it that way. So if you are an aspiring author who wanted to query, and if you had New Leaf on the top of your list and now you're feeling a little bit stung, and you're nervous because you don't know what other agents, what other editors, what else might be out there waiting to harm you, I'm here to tell you that as terrible as these experiences are, and as real as these authors' stories are, there are so many agents out there who are amazing partners to have in your publishing journey. They are respectful of your time, they are excellent at their jobs, and they genuinely care about you. They're out there. Same with the editors. I don't want to judge all of traditional publishing based on incidents like this. To any author out there who was dropped by New Leaf or by anyone, if you've been through this, feel free to reach out. Oh my gosh, no, wait, stop. I just remember one big thing I had to mention in this, and that was the fact that agents should have a contingency plan for what happens to their authors if they leave the industry. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot to talk about this. The only thing that Jo said in her statement defending all of this is that it's unreasonable to expect that if an agent leaves an agency for any reason, that the other agents will be able to take on her entire list. I agree. I don't think that's the best situation for the author, because your agent... There's like a level of subjectivity when it comes to your work. It's not that your book is bad. It's just some agents are more drawn to certain types of books, and the other agents at your agency might not just be as drawn to yours, and that means they don't work with those editors as much, and they're not gonna have the best chance at selling your book. So I do agree with her on that. However, that does not mean that you just cut them loose and let them go. I do think a contingency plan needs to be put in place. I mean, agents decide to leave the industry. Agents retire, and you guys know, and I will link that video up here, I have that experience. And you know what my agent, Sarah, did? She called every single author she represented. She spent, it probably took her a couple days. She had a big list, and she definitely did not want, as Jo said, she did not want one author to find out and then all the rest of us to find out not from her. But the way she took care of that was not to get somebody else at her agency to just send us a mass email and let that be it. She called each of us personally, and she just did them all right in a row. It must have been very emotionally exhausting for her. She called every single one of us. And I don't know, I talked to a lot of my fellow, greenhouse clients who were represented by her afterwards. I don't think anybody found out, not that I know of, anywhere than from Sarah. Because she asked us, please don't talk about this publicly until I've had a chance. And we respected that. Because we had a mutually respectful partnership. I'm heated. And the other thing was, she told me, what was that, in June, July? It was sometime in the summer. And she wasn't retiring until the end of 2020, December. So I had like half a year's notice, as did all of her clients. And even though the agent who was taking over Greenhouse had already decided the very select few of Sarah's clients that she wanted to keep on, and I was not one of them, which again, very understandable, hold no bad feelings about that at all. I was told that if I wanted to send her anything in the fall for her to look at just to see, that I was welcome to do so, and that both of them, her and Sarah, were here for me if I needed advice or help as I searched for a new agent. I could not, there's no way they could have been more supportive in how they did it. And just as a bonus, after Sarah retired, it was what, 3 months after that, so March of the following year, when my editor at Scholastic was like, hey, this is when I was getting the book deal for What'll I Do Without You, and I didn't have an agent, Greenhouse represented me. They put together a contract just to represent and negotiate that one deal so that I didn't have to do it without representation. So yeah, could not have felt more supported. There is a way to handle this. And sending a mass email, not like everything they did about this was wrong, and everything and when I say they, I'm naming names, I'm gonna say it over and over again, Joe and Susie, because they're the president and vice president and have been since the beginning. Everything they said in defense of how they handled it after, the way they doubled down on it, no. They don't see authors as people. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. If that puts me on somebody's blacklist, well, maybe that's not somebody that I want to work with either. So that's it. Links below. This was, I didn't mean to rant so much, but I'm just very upset for these authors. So yeah, I'll see you guys next week with another video. Bye.